The shuttle departed at dawn station time. David was the only passenger, his destination listed as indefinite. He watched through the viewport as Crossroads Station grew smaller, its lights dimming until it was just another star among millions. His comm unit beeped with an incoming message. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. It was from Pip. "Hey, David. Uncle Pell says I shouldn't bother you, but I wanted to say goodbye properly. You told me that being brave means doing what needs to be done even when you're scared. I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. Not because you killed the Ravager, but because you did it even though it hurt you. Even though you knew people would look at you differently afterward. Even though it cost you something important. That's real bravery. I hope someday I can be that brave. Take care of yourself, and thank you for keeping us safe. Your friend, Pip." David read the message twice, then saved it in a folder with other messages he kept from people he had helped over the years. Reminders that what he did mattered, even when it felt like it didn't. The shuttle's navigation system beeped, indicating they were far enough from the station to engage the faster-than-light drive. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Passenger Cole, we're ready to jump. Do you have a destination preference?" David pulled up a list of stations and colonies requesting security personnel. There were always requests, always places where dangerous things needed to be dealt with, always problems that peaceful people could not solve themselves. He selected one at random. The specifics did not matter. The work was always the same. "Confirmed," he told the pilot. "Take us there." As the shuttle jumped, David leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. He thought about the Ravager, about the 12 who died, about Pell's impossible choice and Pip's simple wisdom. He thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that had largely moved beyond humanity's violent past. Most species had evolved beyond the need for people like him. They had built civilizations on cooperation and reason. They had created wonders that made Earth's greatest achievements look primitive. They had every right to be proud of what they had accomplished. But they had also forgotten something important. They had forgotten that peace is not the natural state of the universe. Peace is something you build and maintain and defend. It requires constant work, constant vigilance, constant sacrifice, and sometimes it requires people willing to do terrible things so others can remain innocent. David opened his eyes and looked at his reflection in the viewport. He saw a tired man with blood on his hands and weight on his shoulders. He saw someone who had killed because killing was necessary. He saw a guardian who would never be fully welcomed by the people he protected. He saw a human, and he understood, maybe for the first time, what that really meant. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not technology or art or philosophy. It was the willingness to carry the burden of violence so others did not have to stand in the dark places and face the dark things. To be the monster that fights monsters, someone had to do it. Someone had to hunt the hunters. It might as well be him. The shuttle continued through the void, carrying its solitary passenger toward another station, another problem, another necessary evil. Behind them, Crossroads Station continued its peaceful existence, its thousands of inhabitants going about their lives in safety and comfort. They would probably never think about David Cole again. Would never remember the quiet human who saved them all by doing what they could not. And that was fine. That was how it should be. Guardians belong in the shadows. Heroes get remembered. Guardians just get the job done. David pulled out his datapad and began reading the mission briefing for his next assignment. Another predator. Another station in danger. Another choice that someone else could not make. He had been asked once how many times he could do this. How many times he could become the thing he hunted. Carry the weight of necessary violence. Pay the cost that peace demanded. His answer then was the same as his answer now. As many times as necessary. Because that's what humans do. They survive. They adapt. They do what must be done no matter the cost. And when the galaxy asks how to stop a predator, humans smile that tired, knowing smile and ask the only question that matters. You mean permanently? Below him, the Ravager continued searching. And David saw something he had not expected to see. The creature was not angry or frightened. It was excited. This was a game to it, a puzzle to solve. It thought it was still the hunter, still in control, still invincible. It had no idea it was about to die. David raised the rifle and aimed. His finger moved to the trigger. All he had to do was squeeze. All he had to do was end this. The Ravager's head turned. Somehow, despite the thermal camouflage, despite David's stillness, it knew he was there. Their eyes met across the distance of the cargo bay. Predator and predator, hunter and hunter. The creature's body tensed, preparing to leap up to the catwalk. It had found its real prey. No more holograms. No more tricks. Just a direct challenge, but David was not here for challenges. He was here to protect people. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle crack echoed through the cargo bay. The Ravager jerked as the bullet struck exactly where David had aimed. It staggered, confused more than hurt. The armor plate had stopped the bullet from penetrating deeply, but the impact was enough to hurt. David fired again. And again. Precise, methodical shots. Each one aimed at gaps in the armor. Professional, efficient. There was no anger in it, no hatred. Just the cold calculation of a hunter who knew his prey. The Ravager tried to charge the catwalk, but its movements were sluggish now. Blood streamed from multiple wounds. It roared, a sound of rage and defiance, refusing to accept what was happening. David reloaded calmly. He had done this many times before with other predators. The trick was not to rush, not to panic, not to let emotion cloud judgment. He aimed for the head this time, where there was no armor. One more shot. Clean and quick, the Ravager fell. David waited 5 full minutes before coming down from the catwalk. He kept the rifle trained on the body the entire time, watching for any sign of movement. Only when he was certain it was dead did he lower the weapon. Up close, the Ravager looked smaller than it had seemed before. Just an animal, really. Dangerous, yes. Deadly, absolutely. But in the end, just an animal that had followed its nature to the wrong place. David knelt beside it and placed one hand on its armored hide. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You were just doing what you were made to do. It wasn't your fault this happened. But fault did not matter. Necessity did, and it had been necessary." He stood and activated his comm unit. "Pell, it's done. The Ravager is dead." There was a long silence before the administrator responded. "Confirmed. Thermal scans show no movement from its signature. I'll secure the area and wait for cleanup crews." Another silence. "Then thank you, David. I know this was not easy." "No, it wasn't." David looked at the body one more time. But it was necessary. He ended the call and sat down on the cargo bay floor, suddenly exhausted. The rifle lay across his knees. His hands shook slightly, the adrenaline finally fading now that the danger was over. 12 people had died before he made this choice. 12 people who might still be alive if he had acted sooner, if he had not waited for the peaceful solutions to fail, if he had trusted his own judgment instead of deferring to others. That weight would stay with him forever. Just like all the others, the memorial service filled the main concourse. 12 names displayed on the central screen. 12 lives ended by violence that should never have reached them. David stood at the back, watching families grieve for people he had failed to protect. He wore his dress uniform, the one he never thought he would need on a peaceful station. The one that now felt like a costume. Pell spoke about loss and resilience. Dr. Renna talked about the preciousness of life. Handler Wick, still on the station recovering from his injuries, said something about learning from tragedy. All of them carefully avoided mentioning how the tragedy ended. What it took to finally stop the killing. Who it took. After the service, people avoided looking at David. They moved around him like water around a stone. Close enough to acknowledge his presence, but never close enough to actually interact. He had become something uncomfortable. A reminder of violence in a place built to escape it. The guardian who saved them and the killer they wished they had not needed. Only Pip approached him, the young Quilon's face still showing traces of recent tears. "Are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning. Early shuttle." "Where will you go?" David shrugged. "Wherever someone needs a problem solved. That's what I'm good at, solving problems that no one else wants to touch." "That sounds lonely." "It is, but it's honest." David glanced around at the dispersing crowd. These people, they want to believe the universe is kind. That reason and compassion can solve everything. I don't have the heart to tell them they're wrong. Are they wrong? No, they're right for most things. Most problems can be solved peacefully. Most conflicts can be mediated. Most species want to cooperate. David's eyes drifted to where the Ravager's body had been taken for study, but not all. Some things only understand strength. Some things only stop permanently. Pip was quiet for a moment, then said, You know what I think? I think you're sad because you wish they were right all the time. You wish you lived in the universe they think exists, where violence is never necessary, where people like you don't have to do the things you do. Smart kid. Too smart for his age. Yeah, I wish that too. Will you keep doing this? Hunting dangerous things? Someone has to. If people like me don't exist, then places like this can't exist either. Your uncle built a station where everyone is safe to be peaceful. But that safety isn't free. Someone has to pay the cost. David managed a tired smile. I just wish the cost wasn't so high. Pell found him later that evening in his quarters, packing the last of his belongings. The administrator stood in the doorway, all forearms crossed in a defensive posture. I wanted to thank you, Pell said, and apologize. For what? For putting you in an impossible position. For asking you to compromise yourself so we could maintain our principles. For making you the villain so we could stay heroes. Pell's shoulders slumped. You were right. Everything you said, you were right. And we refused to listen until it was too late. David folded a shirt and placed it in his bag. You did what you thought was right. Can't fault you for that. But people died because of what I thought was right. 12 people who trusted me to keep them safe. And thousands more are alive because you built a place where different species can coexist peacefully. You created something beautiful here, Pell. Don't let one failure destroy that. David zipped the bag closed. The Ravager was an aberration. Most species don't hunt for sport. Most species can be reasoned with. Your way works for almost everything. Just not for everything. No, not for everything. Pell moved into the room, studying David's face. Handler Wicks asked me something yesterday. He wanted to know how humans survived on a world violent enough to produce people like you. I told him I didn't know. It's because we had no choice. Earth didn't let us be peaceful. Every day was a fight to survive. Every generation had to be tougher than the last or they died out. David sat on his bunk. But you know what's interesting? Once we got strong enough, smart enough, organized enough that we didn't have to fight every day, most humans chose peace anyway. We built cities and laws and societies. We created art and music and philosophy. We proved that being capable of violence doesn't mean you have to be violent. Then why do you still carry it with you? The capacity for violence? Because someone has to. Because the universe isn't entirely peaceful no matter how much we wish it was. Because things like the Ravager exist and they don't care about our principles or our philosophy. They just hunt. David looked at his packed bags. I carry the violence so others don't have to. That's the deal humanity made with itself thousands of years ago. Some of us become guardians, become soldiers, become hunters, so the rest can be teachers and artists and builders. It's not fair to you. No. But it's necessary. Pell was silent for a long time. Finally, he reached into his robe and pulled out a small data chip. This contains letters. From the families of the 12 who died. They wanted you to have them. David took the chip reluctantly. What do they say? I don't know. They're encrypted for your eyes only. Pell turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I don't see you as a killer. I see you as someone who did what I couldn't. Who carried a weight I wasn't strong enough to lift. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes you a guardian. After he left, David sat alone in his quarters and loaded the data chip. 12 letters appeared on his screen. He read them slowly one by one. Some thanked him for ending the threat. Some expressed anger that he had not acted sooner. Some simply shared memories of the people who died as if making sure David knew they had been real people with real lives. One letter from the family of Tess, the first victim, said only, Our daughter did not die because you failed. She died because something evil came to this station. You stopped that evil. Thank you. David read that letter 3 times before he could continue. By the time he finished all 12, his face was wet with tears he had not realized he was shedding. He had killed the Ravager. But the Ravager had killed part of him too. The part that believed he could protect everyone, save everyone, be fast enough and smart enough to prevent all tragedy. That part was dead now, and it was not coming back. We need to discuss this properly, Pell said. We need to vote. We need to follow proper procedures. While you vote, more people will die, Dr. Renna said. Then they die following our values instead of abandoning them. Pell stood, his posture rigid. I will not make this decision alone. I will not carry this weight by myself. If we are to become killers, we do it together or not at all. The emergency council reconvened. Every department head, every representative, every voice that mattered on Crossroads Station gathered to debate the one question nobody had wanted to ask. Do we kill the Ravager? Arguments flew back and forth. Some said yes, that protecting the innocent was more important than any principle. Others said no, that once you start killing to solve problems, you become the monster you are fighting. Still others argued for more time, more options, more attempts at peaceful resolution. Through it all, David sat in the back, silent and still. He had said his piece. Now it was up to them. Finally, after 3 hours of debate, Pell called for a vote. The measure passed by a narrow margin. They would authorize lethal force, but only as a last resort, only if every other option was truly exhausted, and only if David Cole agreed to do it. Pell approached him after the vote. Will you? Can you? David looked at the administrator with tired eyes. You're asking me to be your monster, to do the thing you're all too civilized to do. You want me to carry the weight so you don't have to. Yes, I know it's not fair. I know it's asking too much. But you're the only one here who knows how. Knows how to kill, you mean. Knows how to hunt. Pell met his gaze steadily. Will you? David thought about the 12 dead. About Pip, brave and terrified. About all the people who had built their lives on this station, believing they were safe. About the Ravager thriving on death and dominance. I'll do it, he said finally. But I need you to understand something first. You're not just authorizing me to kill a predator. You're authorizing me to become one, because that's what it takes. You have to think like them, move like them, be willing to do what they do. And once I cross that line, I can't uncross it. I'll always be the human who killed when everyone else couldn't. I understand. No, David said, standing up. You really don't, but you will. David's quarters looked different with the sealed storage locker open. Inside sat equipment he had hoped never to use again. A hunting rifle broken down into components, ammunition, a skinning knife, motion sensors, thermal camouflage gear. All the tools of a predator hunter, brought from Earth and hidden away because they violated every regulation Crossroads Station had. He assembled the rifle slowly, his hands moving through the familiar motions. Stock connects to receiver, barrel slides into place, scope mounts on top. Each piece clicked together with mechanical certainty. This was not a tranquilizer gun or a stun weapon. This was designed for one purpose only: to kill. A knock at his door made him look up. Pip stood in the doorway, staring at the weapon. Is that what I think it is? The young Quilon asked. Probably. I thought lethal weapons were forbidden on the station. They are. David attached the scope and sighted down the barrel, checking the alignment. I broke the rules keeping this, just like I'm about to break the rules using it. Pip came inside, moving closer to the rifle with nervous curiosity. My uncle says you used to hunt dangerous animals on Earth. Yeah, bears mostly. Sometimes wolves or big cats. Anytime something came into human territory and started causing problems, they called people like me. Did you always kill them? No, most times we could relocate them. Drug them, put them in a transport, take them somewhere far from people. But sometimes, David set the rifle down carefully, sometimes they were too dangerous, too aggressive, too damaged by their contact with humans to ever be wild again. Those ones we had to put down. How did you decide? By looking at them. By understanding what drove them. An animal hunting for food, you can relocate that. Give it better territory with more prey, it stops being a problem. But an animal that's learned to see humans as easy prey, an animal that kills for sport or territory or just because it can, that animal won't stop. Can't stop. Its nature won't let it. Pip sat down on David's bunk. The Ravager won't stop, will it? No. Even if we gave it everything it wanted. What it wants is to hunt us. That's what makes it feel powerful. That's what makes it feel alive. David picked up the skinning knife, testing the edge with his thumb. Still sharp. I've seen its kind before. Not Ravagers specifically, but that type. The apex predator that has never known fear, never known failure. It thinks it's invincible. And maybe on its homeworld it was. But here, surrounded by prey species that can't fight back, it's a god. Why would it ever give that up? So you have to kill it. Yes. And that makes you sad. David looked at the young Quilon in surprise. What makes you think I'm sad? Your face. The way you move. You look like my uncle did when his brother died. Like something inside hurts, but you can't show it because you have to be strong for everyone else. Smart kid. David set down the knife. I don't enjoy killing. Never have. Even when it's necessary. Even when it's the right thing to do, it still feels like a failure. Like I should have been smart enough or skilled enough to find another way. But there isn't another way. No. Not this time. David stood and began gathering the rest of his equipment. That's what your uncle and the council don't understand. They think killing is always wrong. Always a failure of morality. But sometimes killing is the moral choice. Sometimes protecting the innocent means becoming the monster they need you to be. Pip watched him work for a while, then asked quietly, "Are you scared?" "Terrified. But you're still going to do it. That's what being brave means. Doing what needs to be done even when you're scared." David shouldered his pack of equipment. "You should go. I need to prepare. Can I ask you one more thing?" "Sure. After this is over, after you've killed the Ravager, what happens to you?" David paused at the door. "I leave. People like your uncle, they can't look at someone who has killed and see anything but a killer. It doesn't matter why I did it or who I saved. They'll see the blood on my hands and that's all they'll ever see. That's not fair." "No, but it's honest." David managed a tired smile. "Take care of your uncle, Pip. He's going to need you." The hunting started in the early hours of station night, when most of the population was asleep. David moved through the lower sections like a ghost, his thermal camouflage making him nearly invisible to the Ravager's primary sense. He was not trying to trap the creature or contain it. He was doing exactly what it had been doing, hunting. The difference was experience. The Ravager had hunted for perhaps a decade on its homeworld before capture. David had hunted for 30 years across dozens of environments against dozens of species. He knew how predators thought because he had spent half his life thinking like them. He found the first sign of the Ravager's passage in a maintenance corridor. Claw marks on the walls, fresher than the ones from previous attacks. The creature had come through here recently, probably within the hour. David examined the marks carefully, noting their depth and angle. The Ravager was moving confidently, not bothering to hide its trail. Still acting like the apex predator it thought it was. David smiled grimly. Time to change that perception. He set up motion sensors along 3 different corridors, all leading away from the Ravager's current territory. Then he did something that would have horrified Dr. Renna and the council. He downloaded thermal signatures of station residents, people who were safely evacuated and far from danger, and programmed the sensors to project those signatures as holograms, bait, digital ghosts of prey, luring the predator where David wanted it to go. It took 2 hours, but eventually the motion sensors detected movement. The Ravager, drawn by what looked like easy prey, began following the holographic signatures. David tracked its progress on his datapad, staying well ahead of it, always moving, always thinking 3 steps ahead. He led it deeper into the lower sections, away from any populated areas toward a cargo bay he had prepared earlier. The bay was large and empty, with high ceilings and multiple levels of catwalks. Good sightlines for shooting, multiple positions for repositioning if the first shot failed, and most importantly, only one entrance. Once the Ravager went in, David would seal the door. One predator, one hunter. One way this ended. The Ravager reached the cargo bay entrance and paused. For a moment, David thought it might sense the trap. Predators had instincts, warnings that screamed danger when something felt wrong. He watched through a security camera, barely breathing, waiting to see what it would do. Then the Ravager saw movement inside the bay. Another holographic signature, this one programmed to move erratically like wounded prey. The creature's predatory instincts overcame its caution. It entered the bay. David sealed the door. The Ravager spun immediately, realizing it was trapped. It charged the door, slamming into reinforced steel that did not budge. Then it went still, head moving back and forth, searching for the prey it had seen. David watched from his position on an upper catwalk, the rifle steady in his hands. He had a perfect shot, center mass, right behind the shoulder where the armor plates were thinnest. One squeeze of the trigger and this would be over, but he hesitated. The Ravager, lighter than David and moving faster, stumbled in the sudden gust. It gave David just enough time to reach a junction and dive through a maintenance hatch. The emergency barriers dropped, sealing off the entire section. On screen, Pip watched David's thermal signature move through the maintenance tunnels, heading back toward safety. The Ravager's signature paced back and forth in front of the barrier, like a cat denied its prey. When David finally made it back to the monitoring station, he was bleeding from a dozen small cuts where he had scraped against sharp edges in the tunnels. Dr. Renna immediately began fussing over him with medical supplies. "I'm fine," David said, waving her away. He looked at Pell. "Your sedation didn't work. I can see that. So what's next? What's the third peaceful solution?" Pell sat down heavily. "I don't know." Handler Wicks arrived on a priority shuttle interrupting his vacation on a pleasure moon halfway across the sector. He was a Quellan, tall and thin with skin that shifted through shades of green depending on his mood. Right now his skin was a dark olive color that meant he was focused and serious. "I am told you have a predator problem," Wicks said, settling into a chair in the conference room. His voice had a musical quality, rising and falling in patterns that suggested calm and confidence. "We have a killing problem," Pell corrected. 8 dead now. We have tried containment. We have tried sedation. Both failed. Because you approached the situation incorrectly." Wicks pulled up his own datapad and began making notes. "You treated the Ravager like a mindless beast. But the reports I read suggest something different. This creature displays intelligence, planning, even creativity in how it hunts. You cannot contain or drug intelligence. You must negotiate with it." David, standing near the window, let out a short laugh. "You want to negotiate with something that arranges corpses like furniture?" "Yes, because that behavior indicates self-awareness and symbolic thinking. The Ravager is not just killing. It is communicating. It is establishing dominance through visual display." Wicks's skin brightened slightly, a sign of enthusiasm. "This is actually quite exciting. Few predator species develop this level of cognitive sophistication. 8 people are dead and you find it exciting. I find the solution exciting. If we can establish communication, we can explain to the Ravager that its behavior is unacceptable. We can offer it alternatives: food, territory, enrichment, whatever it needs to feel secure without killing sapient beings." Dr. Renna floated forward, her colors shifting to interested yellow. "How would you establish communication?" "Through multiple channels. Visual patterns, chemical signals, electromagnetic pulses. We would create a language interface that bridges our different sensory experiences." Wicks pulled up a series of complex diagrams. "I have done this successfully with 4 other predator species. There is no reason to believe it cannot work here." David turned from the window. "Yes, there is. Those other species, were they hunting for food or for sport? I do not see how that is relevant." "It's the only thing that's relevant. A predator hunting for food can be satisfied. You give it what it needs, it stops hunting. But a predator hunting for sport, for dominance, for the thrill of it, that's different. You can't satisfy that with negotiations. You can only prove you're stronger." Wicks's skin darkened with irritation. "That is a very human perspective. Violence as the answer to all problems. No, violence as the answer to one specific problem. The problem of something that kills because it enjoys killing. We don't know that it enjoys it." David walked to the display showing images of the cargo bay, where the Ravager had arranged its victims in a circle. "Look at that and tell me it doesn't enjoy it." The room fell silent. Finally, Pell spoke. "We will attempt communication. Handler Wicks, you have 48 hours to establish dialogue. If you succeed, the Ravager lives. If you fail..." The administrator's voice trailed off. "I won't fail," Wicks said confidently. David left the meeting without another word. In the corridor outside, he found Pip waiting for him. The young Quelan fell into step beside him. "You don't think it will work?" Pip said. "No." "Why not?" "Handler Wicks has an excellent reputation. He saved dozens of endangered predators from extermination." "Saved them from what? From angry farmers who lost livestock? From colonists who wanted land? That's different." "Those predators were just trying to survive. This thing isn't surviving. It's thriving. It's won. Why would it negotiate away its victory?" They walked in silence for a while. Then Pip asked quietly, "What would you do, if you could do anything?" David stopped walking. He looked at the young Quelan for a long moment. "What did your uncle tell you about Earth?" "That it was violent. That humans fought wars and killed each other and destroyed their own predators." "He's right. We did all those things." David leaned against the wall. "But you know what else we did? We survived. Every other sapient species in the galaxy evolved on worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. Where working together meant living and fighting meant dying. Earth wasn't like that. Earth had predators that hunted in packs. Earth had diseases that killed millions. Earth had weather that could wipe out entire regions. And humans survived it all by learning to be more dangerous than the things hunting us. That sounds horrible. It was. But it taught us something your people never had to learn. Sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to become a bigger predator. Pip's hands trembled slightly. Could you do it? Could you hunt the Ravager? Yes. Would you kill it? David was quiet for a long time. I would do what was necessary to keep people safe. Nothing more, nothing less. Handler Wicks worked quickly. Within 6 hours, he had assembled an impressive array of communication equipment in a secure observation room overlooking one of the sealed sections where the Ravager was last seen. Screens displayed visual patterns that pulsed in complex sequences. Chemical synthesizers released scent markers into the ventilation system. Electromagnetic generators created pulses at different frequencies. We start with basic concepts, Wicks explained to the assembled observers. Safety, food, territory. We establish that we understand it has needs. Then we move to more complex ideas. Cooperation, mutual benefit, peaceful coexistence. And if it doesn't respond? Dr. Renna asked. All intelligent beings respond to communication. It is simply a matter of finding the right language. They activated the system. On the screens, patterns danced and shifted. Chemical sensors registered the scent markers being released. The electromagnetic generators hummed at frequencies that made David's teeth ache. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then thermal sensors detected movement. The Ravager emerged from a side corridor, moving slowly, its head turning from side to side as if listening. It's working, Wicks said excitedly. It's responding to the patterns. The Ravager moved closer to the observation room. Its eyes tracked the visual displays. For a moment, it seemed genuinely interested. Then it looked directly at the observation window, at the cameras, at the people watching it, and it charged. The creature hit the reinforced window with enough force to crack the outer layer. Alarms blared. People screamed. The Ravager backed up and charged again, its claws scraping against the transparent material, leaving deep gouges. It's rejecting the communication, Dr. Renna shouted over the noise. No, we just need to adjust the parameters. Wicks frantically worked his controls. The visual patterns changed. The chemical compounds shifted. The electromagnetic pulses increased in intensity. The Ravager responded by ramming the window a third time. This time, spiderweb cracks spread across the entire surface. Everyone out, Pell ordered. Now. They evacuated the observation room just before the window shattered. The Ravager climbed through, roaring in what sounded like triumph. It destroyed the communication equipment methodically, piece by piece, as if it understood exactly what the equipment was for and wanted to make sure the message was clear. No negotiations. No communication. No compromise. Handler Wicks sat in the conference room afterward, his skin a pale, sickly green. I don't understand. The patterns were correct. The chemical signals were precise. Everything should have worked. It did work, David said quietly. You communicated perfectly. And it responded. Its response was no. But why? Why reject any attempt at peaceful resolution? Because it doesn't want peace. It wants to hunt. That's what makes it feel alive. That's what gives its life meaning. David stood and walked to the door. You can't negotiate with that. You can't reason with it. You can only accept what it is and act accordingly. Pell watched him leave, then turned to the others. How many dead now? 12, Dr. Renna said softly. The window breach allowed it to reach an emergency evacuation team. 4 more victims, 12 people. Pell's 4 arms hung limply at his sides. 12 people dead because we insisted on maintaining our principles. What else could we do? Someone asked. There is one other option. Pell's voice was barely above a whisper, one we have refused to consider. Everyone knew what he meant. Nobody wanted to say it out loud. Finally, Pip spoke up from where he sat in the corner. You mean killing it? The words hung in the air like poison, killing. The ultimate failure of civilized society. The admission that intelligence and compassion and principles were not enough. Pip had never seen a dead body before. Now he had seen 3 in the past hour, helping his uncle clear evacuation routes through the lower sections. The young Quilon's hands would not stop shaking. He kept thinking about how those people had been alive yesterday, walking around, talking, living. Now they were just things to be moved carefully into storage until their families could claim them. You should go home. Administrator Pell said gently, placing one of his 4 hands on his nephew's shoulder. You don't need to be here. Yes, I do. Pip's voice cracked, but he stood firm. If I go home and hide, if everyone goes home and hides, then that thing wins. It makes us all prisoners in our own station. Pell's expression softened with something like pride. When did you become so brave? I'm not brave. I'm terrified. But someone told me that being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. Pip gestured around at the empty corridor. This is my home. These are my people. Where else would I be? David Cole walked past them carrying a large case of equipment. He nodded to Pip, a small acknowledgement that somehow made the young Keelan feel a bit stronger. There was something different about the human today, a kind of focused intensity that made him seem dangerous in a way Pip had never noticed before. Is he going to hunt it? Pip asked his uncle. No, he's helping Dr. Renna set up the sedation system. But he could hunt it. I've heard stories about Earth, about what humans did to their predators. Pell sighed, a gesture that rippled through all 4 of his shoulders. Those are just stories, Pip. Exaggerations about a violent past. David is a civilized person living in a civilized time. He understands that we solve problems with intelligence, not violence. Pip watched David disappear around a corner. He was not so sure his uncle was right. The sedation system was more complex than the force field maze had been. Dr. Renna had spent 2 days analyzing the Ravager's biology, running simulations, calculating dosages. The chemical compound they developed was a masterpiece of xenobiology, targeting neural receptors that existed across most carbon-based life forms. It will flood the creature's bloodstream within seconds, Dr. Renna explained to the assembled team. Neural activity will slow, muscle control will fade, and it will fall into a deep sleep. We can maintain that sleep state for as long as needed while we arrange transport. What if it holds its breath? David asked. Excuse me? The planet it comes from, Dust Ridge, I looked it up. Frequent toxic storms that last for days. The native predators evolved the ability to seal their respiratory systems. What if it just stops breathing when it smells the gas? Dr. Renna's colors shifted through several uncomfortable patterns. That would be a significant complication. So you didn't account for it. I accounted for normal respiratory function under stress conditions. I cannot account for every possible biological adaptation. You should if you want this to work. David set down his equipment case with a thud. Look, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to keep more people from dying. If this thing can hold its breath for even 5 minutes, your sedative becomes useless. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we stop assuming it will cooperate with our plans. Every single time we have tried something, it has found a way around it. Because that's what apex predators do. They adapt. They overcome. They survive. So we do nothing? We give up? David rubbed his face with both hands. He had not slept in 2 days. No, we try your sedation, but we do it smart. We don't give it time to figure out what's happening. We hit it fast, multiple injection points, enough volume that even if it holds its breath, the compound absorbs through its skin. Dr. Renna considered this. That would require getting very close to it. Yeah, it would. And who exactly would do that? David looked at her, his expression flat. Who do you think? The plan came together quickly after that. They would use the thermal drones again, not to herd the Ravager this time, but to locate it precisely. Then David would approach with aerosol canisters of the sedative compound, modified to deliver high-pressure sprays at close range. Dr. Renna insisted on adding a backup team with tranquilizer guns, just in case. Pip volunteered to help coordinate the drones. Pell tried to forbid it, but the young Keelan argued that he knew the station's layout better than most of the senior staff. He had grown up here, explored every corridor and chamber. If anyone could predict where the Ravager might go, it was him. Finally, Pell agreed. But only if Pip stayed in the monitoring station, far from any actual danger. They found the Ravager in a cargo bay that should have been empty. Instead, the thermal scans showed it surrounded by heat signatures, smaller ones arranged in a circle around the predator. What are those? Pell asked, staring at the screen. Pip felt his stomach drop. Bodies, it's collecting them. David moved closer to the monitor. The young Keelan was right. The Ravager had dragged the corpses of its victims into the cargo bay and arranged them around its resting spot, a trophy room. A display of dominance, that's new behavior, Dr. Renna said quietly. Field observations never mentioned anything like this. Field observations were made from a distance, David replied. Nobody got close enough to see what these things do when they think they're in control. He picked up his equipment case. I'm going in. Wait. Pell stood, all forearms raised in a gesture that meant stop. This is too dangerous. If it has learned to display its kills, it has learned to defend its territory. It will be aggressive. It's always been aggressive. That's the point. David checked the pressure seals on his aerosol canisters. But now we know where it is. Now we have a chance. I cannot allow you to go alone. You don't have a choice. Anyone else you send will just be another body for its collection. David headed for the door. Keep the drones back. I don't want it spooked before I get there. Pip watched him leave, then looked at his uncle. He's going to die, isn't he? Pell's 4 shoulders slumped. I don't know. The walk to the cargo bay felt longer than it should have. David moved slowly, quietly, each step carefully placed to minimize sound. The aerosol canisters hung from his belt, heavy and cold. In his hands he carried a tranquilizer rifle, borrowed from station security. It felt like a toy compared to what he was used to. On Earth, when he had tracked problem bears, he carried a real rifle, not because he wanted to kill them, but because if everything went wrong, he needed the option. Out here, that option did not exist. The station's charter forbade lethal weapons. Everything was designed to contain, to control, to preserve life. Noble ideas. But nobility did not stop predators. He reached the cargo bay entrance. The door was open, probably forced by the Ravager at some point. Inside, he could see the bodies arranged in their circle. And in the center, the Ravager itself, lying like a king on a throne of death. David raised the tranquilizer rifle. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. He had done this 100 times before with other predators. He could do it now. Then the Ravager opened its eyes. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Human and predator, 2 creatures that had climbed to the top of their respective food chains. The Ravager's eyes were intelligent, aware. It knew exactly what David was. It knew he was a threat. The creature moved like lightning. One moment it was lying down. The next it was charging straight at him. David fired the tranquilizer rifle, the dart flying true, hitting the Ravager in its shoulder. But it did not slow down. It did not even flinch. David dropped the rifle and grabbed the first aerosol canister. He had maybe 3 seconds before the Ravager reached him. He pressed the trigger, spraying a cloud of sedative directly into the creature's face. The Ravager ran right through it, and kept coming. David dodged to the side, his body moving on instinct. Claws scraped against metal where he had been standing. He pulled the second canister and sprayed again, coating the Ravager's armored hide with the chemical compound. Nothing happened. The creature turned, faster than something that big should be able to move. David saw its muscles bunch for another charge. He grabbed the third canister, his last one, and threw it directly at the Ravager's head. The canister exploded on impact, covering the predator in a cloud of sedative. For just a moment, the Ravager paused. Its eyes blinked. Its head swayed slightly. Then it sealed its nostrils and mouth with internal flaps of tissue, and the swaying stopped. Dr. Renna had been right to worry. The creature could hold its breath. And it had learned that the gas was a threat. David ran. He made it out of the cargo bay and into the corridor beyond, his lungs burning, his legs pumping. Behind him, he heard the Ravager's claws scraping on metal as it gave chase. It was not as fast as before. Some of the sedative must have absorbed through its skin, but it was still faster than him. The monitoring station erupted in chaos. Pip watched the thermal signature labeled David Cole, moving through the corridors with the larger signature right behind him. He's not going to make it, someone said. Seal the sections, Pell ordered. Drop the emergency barriers. That will trap Cole on the other side. Do it anyway. We cannot let that thing reach the populated areas. Pip's hands moved before his brain could stop them. He accessed the station's environmental controls and triggered an emergency vent in the corridor David was running through. Atmosphere rushed out, not enough to harm anyone, but enough to create a powerful wind. The force field generators hummed like angry insects. Dr. Renna floated between 2 of them, adjusting their frequency with delicate movements of her thin appendages. Around her, a crew of technicians worked to install more generators along the corridor walls. They were building a maze, a path that would funnel the Ravager exactly where they wanted it to go. David crouched near a junction point, studying the layout on his datapad. The plan was elegant, he had to admit. Use the creature's own territorial instincts against it. Make it follow a path that seemed like its choice when really every turn was controlled. Lead it deeper into the lower sections, away from populated areas until finally it walked right into a reinforced cargo bay. Then seal the doors and flood the room with containment fields. The Ravager would be trapped in a box of pure energy, unable to move but unharmed. You look skeptical, Dr. Renna said, drifting over to him. I look realistic, David replied. How long did it take you to design this system? 18 hours. And how long has that thing been hunting? 3 days now. 5 victims. Dr. Renna's color shifted to a somber blue. I know what you're thinking. That we're too slow, too careful. But we have to try this the right way first. David tapped his datapad, bringing up thermal scans of the lower sections. Somewhere in that maze of corridors and chambers, the Ravager was moving. The scans showed a large heat signature, bigger than any being that should be on the station. It was pacing back and forth in what looked like a supply room. The right way assumes it will cooperate. It will follow its nature. We have studied predator behavior extensively, in labs and nature preserves. This is different. This thing knows it's the biggest, meanest creature here. It's not scared. It's not looking for a way out. It's having the time of its life. Dr. Renna's colors flickered with something that might have been irritation. You humans always assume violence is inevitable. No, we just remember when it was. David stood and stretched. His back hurt from crouching so long. How long until the system is ready? Another 6 hours. We need to test each generator. Make sure the frequency alignment is perfect. If even one field fails, the whole maze collapses. 6 hours. Think we can go 6 hours without another body? The thermal drones are tracking it constantly. If it moves toward populated sections, we'll know immediately. David nodded, but he was not convinced. Thermal drones were designed to find lost people in emergency situations, not track intelligent predators. The Ravager had already proven it could avoid most of the station's sensors. What made them think it could not avoid these too? A technician called out from down the corridor. Dr. Renna, we have a problem. Generator 12 is not syncing with the others. The scientist hurried away, leaving David alone with his thoughts. He pulled up the thermal scan again and watched the red blob that represented the Ravager. It had stopped pacing. Now it was just sitting there, waiting. That worried him more than if it had been moving. 6 hours later, the system was ready. David stood in the monitoring station with Pell and Dr. Renna, watching multiple screens that showed different angles of the maze they had built. Every generator glowed blue with active force fields. Every corridor was mapped and monitored. Begin herding sequence, Dr. Renna commanded. Technicians activated the thermal drones, small flying units equipped with heat emitters, designed to irritate the Ravager's thermal vision. They would not hurt it, just annoy it enough to make it move away, and they would move it exactly where the team wanted. On the screens, David watched the drones approach the Ravager's position. The creature was in a storage room that had once held spare parts for life support systems. Now it held a killer and nothing else. The drones entered the room, their heat signatures showing up bright on the thermal cameras. The Ravager moved, fast, faster than David expected. It went straight for one of the drones, leaping with terrifying speed. Claws flashed. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks. That's fine, Dr. Renna said quickly. We expected it might destroy some drones. Send in more. They sent 6 more drones. The Ravager destroyed 3 of them before the others managed to herd it out of the storage room and into the corridor. Then it stopped. Why is it stopping? Pell asked. David leaned closer to the screen. The Ravager was looking at the walls. Not just looking, examining them. Its head moved from side to side, studying the force field generators. It's learning the system, David said quietly. Impossible. It's an animal. It's an apex predator from a world that tried to kill everything on it. Learning fast is how its species survived. As if to prove his point, the Ravager moved again, but not down the corridor like they wanted. Instead, it jumped straight up, claws finding purchase on the ceiling. It crawled along the top of the corridor, moving past the force fields that were designed to block the floor level. Adjust the fields, Dr. Renna ordered. Extend them to cover the ceiling. Technicians worked their controls. On screen, the force fields flickered and expanded. For a moment, everything seemed to work. The Ravager dropped back to the floor and began moving in the right direction. Then it did something unexpected. It charged directly at one of the force field generators and slammed into it with its full weight. The generator sparked, Alarms blared. On the monitoring screens, a cascade of red warnings appeared. "It's creating a feedback loop," a technician shouted. "The generators are overloading." "Shut them down," Pell ordered. "If we shut them down, the maze disappears. If we don't shut them down, they explode." Dr. Rana made the call. Emergency shutdown. All generators section by section. The blue glow faded from the screens. One by one, the force fields winked out. And the Ravager, free from the maze that had tried to trap it, looked directly at one of the security cameras. For just a moment, David could swear it was staring right at him. Then it ran, not away from the populated sections, toward them. "Lock down all access points to the main levels," David shouted, already moving toward the door. "Where are you going?" Pell called after him. "To do what I should have done from the start. Track it." David ran through the corridors, his datapad showing him the Ravager's last known position. It had disappeared from the thermal sensors, but it had to be somewhere. Things that big don't just vanish. He found it 10 minutes later, or rather, he found what it left behind. 2 more bodies. Station workers who had been doing routine maintenance in a water recycling room. They never had a chance. The Ravager had killed them and then left, not even bothering to hide the bodies. It wanted them found. David knelt beside the victims, checking for any signs of life even though he knew there would be none. His hands were shaking. Not from fear. From anger. He had tried to warn them, tried to tell them that containment would not work against something like this. But they had insisted on their peaceful way, their civilized way, and now 2 more people were dead because of it. His comm unit beeped. Cole returned to the command center immediately. He stood slowly. His knees hurt. Everything hurt. "On my way." When he got back to the monitoring station, Pell was standing very still, all 4 arms hanging at his sides. The administrator looked older than he had that morning. "It knew," Pell said. "It knew what we were trying to do." "Yes, how?" "Because it's smart. Because it pays attention. Because it understands that we're not just food. We're competitors for territory." David pulled up the station map. "It's moving deeper into the populated sections now. Establishing a new hunting ground. We'll try again. Adjust the containment system. Account for what we learned. You can't contain something that doesn't want to be contained. Then what do you suggest?" Pell's voice rose with frustration. "We cannot just give up. We cannot just let it kill until the station is empty." David met the administrator's eyes. "There are other options. No, we are not going to discuss that. We will find a peaceful solution. How many more bodies do you need before peaceful stops being an option?" The room went silent. Everyone was looking at them now, waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Pell spoke. "We will try sedation next. Chemical agents that will put it to sleep without harming it. Dr. Rena is already working on the formula. We have one more chance to do this right," David wanted to argue, wanted to tell them they were wasting time, but he just nodded and left the room. In his office, he unlocked the drawer again. Inside were tools from Earth, tools designed for a different kind of problem. He left them where they were. For now. Blood floated in perfect spheres through the maintenance tunnel. David Cole watched them drift past his face, catching the dim emergency lighting like tiny red stars. He had seen blood before, plenty of it, but never quite like this. The victim had been dead for maybe 20 minutes. A Quylon engineer named Tess, her forearms still clutching the toolkit she had been carrying when something killed her. David pulled himself along the handrails, his movements careful and deliberate in the low-gravity section. The station's artificial gravity only reached so far, and down here in the guts of Crossroads Station everything floated, including the evidence. He studied the claw marks on the metal wall, deep gouges that tore through reinforced steel like it was paper. Whatever made those marks was strong. Very strong. His comm unit beeped. "Cole, report." Administrator Pell's voice carried the edge of someone trying very hard to stay calm. "Third victim confirmed," David said quietly. "Same pattern as the others. Stalked, toyed with, then killed. This thing is hunting for sport, not food." "Impossible. We run biological scans on every ship that docks. Nothing dangerous should have gotten through." David looked at the claw marks again. Well, something did. The security office on Crossroads Station was not designed for actual security. It was designed for mediating disputes about docking fees and finding lost luggage. David's desk held a computer terminal, some paperwork about noise complaints, and a small potted plant that kept dying because he forgot to water it. On Earth, he had worked in wildlife management. He knew how to track bears through mountain forests and relocate problem wolves. Out here, people thought that experience made him qualified to handle drunk traders and parking violations. Now 3 people were dead, and everyone was looking at him like he should have answers. The emergency council meeting filled the station's main conference room. Representatives from 24 species crowded around the circular table, all talking at once. David stood near the back wall, arms crossed, watching and listening. He had learned that people revealed more when they thought nobody was paying attention. "We need to evacuate the lower sections," someone suggested. A Vess named Dr. Renna, the station's head of biological sciences. She floated above her seat, her translucent body pulsing with agitated colors. "Evacuation would cause panic," Pell countered. The administrator's 4 arms gestured in a pattern that meant firm disagreement in Kelon culture. "We need a calm, measured response. 3 people are dead," Dr. Renna said. "Measured got us corpses." David cleared his throat. Every head in the room turned toward him. "Do we know what we're dealing with?" Dr. Renna pulled up a holographic display. The image showed a creature that looked like someone had crossed a big cat with a tank. 6 legs, each ending in claws as long as David's forearm. Armored plates covering most of its body. A head that was mostly teeth. Ravager. From Dust Ridge. The cargo ship that docked yesterday was transporting it to a research facility. Somehow it got loose. "Dust Ridge is a quarantined world," David said. "How did anyone get authorization to remove a specimen?" "Does it matter right now?" Pell asked. "Yeah, it does. Because if someone bent the rules to get this thing on board, they might have bent other rules too, like safety protocols, like containment specifications." David walked closer to the hologram, studying the creature. "What else do we know about it?" Dr. Renna manipulated the display. "Apex predator. Hunts by thermal signature. Intelligence level is debated, but field observations suggest problem-solving abilities equivalent to Earth's larger hunting cats. Evolved in an environment with few resources and many competing predators. Extremely territorial. So it sees this entire station as its territory now," David said. "We don't know that. I do. Look at where the kills happened." David pulled up a station map and marked 3 locations. "It's establishing a hunting ground. These aren't random. It picked high-traffic areas where prey, U.S., have to pass through regularly. Classic ambush predator behavior." The room went quiet. Finally, a Quellan representative spoke up. "What do we do?" "On Earth, when a dangerous predator enters human territory, we have protocols," David said. "First, we try to contain it. Trap it somewhere it can't hurt anyone. If that doesn't work, we use tranquilizers. Sedate it and relocate it. If that doesn't work..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "We are not a violent species," Pell said firmly. "None of us are. This station was built on principles of peace and cooperation. We will find a peaceful solution. That thing down there doesn't care about your principles. Then we will make it care." Pell stood, all 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of finality. "Dr. Renna, I want you to design a containment system. Use force fields, barriers, whatever you need. We will trap this creature and keep it trapped until we can arrange proper transport off the station. No harm comes to it and no more harm comes to our people." David wanted to argue. He wanted to tell them that predators like this don't get contained easily, that force fields and barriers were designed to hold things that wanted to be held. But he looked around the room and saw species that had never known war, never known hunting, never known what it meant to be prey. They had built their civilizations on different foundations than humanity had. Who was he to tell them their way was wrong? "I'll help however I can," he said instead. The meeting broke up into smaller groups, everyone talking about technical specifications and energy requirements. David slipped out quietly and headed back to his office. He had reports to file and families to notify. 3 people dead because something that should never have been on this station got loose. He sat at his desk and pulled up the files on the victims. Tess, the engineer. Before her, a maintenance worker named Paul. Before that, a merchant who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. All of them just trying to do their jobs, live their lives. None of them had any idea that something was hunting them until it was too late. David's hand moved to a locked drawer in his desk. Inside were items he had brought from Earth, things that violated about 15 different station regulations. He had kept them anyway, hidden away, hoping he would never need them. Now he wondered if hope was enough. His comm unit beeped again. "Cole, we need you in Section 7. We're setting up the containment system." "On my way," he replied. He locked the drawer again and stood, Outside his window, the station continued its normal operations. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds all living together in peace, all trusting that the systems would keep them safe. David hoped they were right. But hope, he had learned long ago, was not a survival strategy.